Good evening, my name is David Cooper, and tonight I'm going to be conducting a presentation for my artist that I had conducted my research paper on. His name was Jacob Lawrence. Jacob Lawrence was born September 7th, 1917. He died June 9, in the year 2000. Lawrence was brought up with two younger siblings. He had a brother and a sister. He's originally from Atlantic City, New Jersey. That's where he was born and raised for the most part of his life, and in 1930 he moved to Harlem, New York. While he lived in Harlem, New York, he was taught and mentored by Mr. Charles Austin. Charles Austin also served him as a mentor for Lawrence, and he also actually taught him art while he was there. While in New York, he also came across Augusta Savage. Savage was actually the head of the Harlem Community Center, and while there, um, he helped Lawrence to get his work out to the public and to get noticed by the community. And Savage had also helped to try and get Lawrence work, but Lawrence was actually too young. He was 13 at the time, so he was unable to work there because of how young he was. Just a little bit of background for what inspired Lawrence. Lawrence was inspired by African American history, by the Harlem community, the serviceman experience while he was actually um, serving in the Coast Guard. He was also inspired by some of the trainings that they had conducted, and as well as everyday life. Like I mentioned earlier, he was very big into history. Toussaint Louverture. Louverture was a leader of a growing resistance during the Haitian Revolution, August 14 of 1791. While there, Louverture transformed the slave insurgency to a revolutionary movement. He fought for Saint Domingue, which is a country in Haiti. This was actually one of the most prosperous French slave colonies in the 1800s. Frederick Douglass was another individual who inspired Lawrence. Douglass was an escaped slave. He was a community activist and leader in the abolitionist movement during the time of slavery. He had pushed for equal rights for women as well, and he also helped them to get voting rights. And he did all of this all up until he passed away in 1895. Another individual that played a major role in his inspiration was, of course, Harriet Tubman. Tubman was an escaped slave as well. She too was an activist and wanted to abolish slavery. Tubman's biggest impact, she had started the Underground Railroad as a means to help slaves escape to freedom through a network of abolitionists and safe houses that were along the way. So she was able to, help them get to freedom. And a fun fact about Harriet Tubman, she was also part of the U.S. Army. She served as a spy while she was there. She was an armed scout. But she had also helped 70 families. She went on 13 different missions while doing the Underground Railroad as well and helped them to see freedom. And also looking at some of the Great Migration series images, one of the major things I noticed that he uses a lot of flat colors. So you'll see most of the time he'll use a lot of browns, greens, oranges, and blacks. But one particular thing that I saw was that he doesn't use the faces of individuals. He usually has them blurred out. I'm guessing that this was because of the fact that African Americans were seen as faceless. They were just seen as one. Um, of course, as the Negro race. So that was one thing that kind of stuck out to me, and what really captivated my view of the Great Migration. And I know also too, of course, with the Great Migration during that time was the Harlem Renaissance. So all of that was going on, which also played a huge role in the creation of this series for him. But this was a great artist that I came across, and I'm glad that I was able to do research on. I learned a lot about him, and I'm hoping that, of course, the next person that does end up with this assignment, I highly recommend Mr. Jacob Lawrence.